Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast, folks. We have a great show in store for you today. We sit down with a man that is running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District of Texas, and he is looking to unseat Congressman Dan Crenshaw. But first,
hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Jameson Ellis is a seventh generation Texan. Look, he's just a regular guy. He's a regular Joe that's trying to live a life of liberty and justice for all in a community that seems to kind of have been disenfranchised by the community leaders here in the great state of Texas. We're talking about the 2nd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Dan Crenshaw is currently residing and presiding over this district. And our next guest, like I said, Jameson Ellis, 7th-generation Texan, who is just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And he's running for Congress. He's standing up. He's going to fight for what's right, and he's going to give back a voice to the people of the 2nd Congressional District of Texas. We're going to find out just what he's going to do right now. Jameson, welcome to the show. How are you?
Man, I'm doing absolutely wonderful. And I just want to say I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, I would be doing myself a big disservice, as well as the people of the 2nd Congressional District and the listeners to my podcast. We have a lot of local listeners. A big disservice by not having you on. And I'm also going to invite Congressman Dan Crenshaw on the show too. He will have an invitation as well because I live in this district. I am a constituent. I do have a family. And I do care deeply about my community and the direction our country is heading in. So, again, the privilege and the honor is all mine here. And I hope we can have a decent conversation on what exactly it is that you look to do if you do unseat Congressman Dan Crenshaw. I know the swamp is very swampy. You can get stuck in there. It's like quicksand. It'll swallow you up, and many do not ever come out the same way. And like a lot of them go in, not having a whole lot of net worth, and they come out, multimillionaires or even the B word. You know what I mean? But it seems as if there's a lot of nefarious type actions that have been going on in our government for quite some time. There's a lot of folks that kind of feel like they've been, disenfranchised. And it almost feels as if the American people feel as if their voice has been removed and that line has been cut and the government just does whatever they want with no checks and balances. That's where you come into play and say, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself to run for Congress because this is kind of how I feel. And I know if I feel this way, I know others are feeling this way. And being a 7th-generation Texan, I know you care deeply about the state of Texas as well as the state of the country. I know you're a big-time constitutionalist, and you're going to bring a different, way, if you will, to D.C. You may be standing in the gap. You may be standing in, in front of a lot of perhaps bad policy and really do what you can to protect the people of the 2nd District. But with that being said, look, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what inspired you to say, you know what, I'm going to file and I am going to put my name on the ballot for the March 5th election here in Texas.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate the introduction, appreciate the opportunity. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm not running to be your leader or to be your superhero. So trust me whenever I say that the honor is all mine, because if all of this works out correctly, you're the boss. right? So I'm the one that's actually honored to be on your show, my friend. So my name is Jameson Ellis, and Jameson, it's easy to remember, just like the whiskey. Only I won't leave you with a hangover in the morning. Well, look, I am not a professional politician, a polished politico, right? You mentioned this. I'm a seventh generation Texan, just a regular working class guy, and that loves my God, my country, and my family. And in that order: God first, always, then my country, and then my family. And your viewers might be asking, well, why do you put country before family? Well, it's because I agree with founding father Benjamin Rush, because that's the order that he put him in. Because he said that if we ever lose control of our country, it will become the great enemy of our family. And honestly, Brian, that's what we're seeing all over the country right now, from Congress and the courthouse and the classrooms to the southern border and our small family-owned businesses. And I do believe that it's going to take a rebellious outsider that plays offense. It goes on the offense. For far too long, we've been playing defense. And here's what I learned playing football and growing up playing sports is offense wins games. Defense just tries not to lose. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so the problem is this political class. So you had mentioned a little bit earlier about this disenfranchisement. The problem is the political class have been gaslighting us into forgetting one of the most paramount principles found in the Declaration of Independence, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Brian, that's you. That's me. That's us. That's we, the people. And so Texas belongs to you, not the likes of triggered neocon political puppets. America belongs to us, not the likes of unelected bureaucrats and special interests. And so you have a voice, and I'm here to make sure that that voice is heard. Now, to just kind of back up to why I'm running, and I'll keep this really, really brief. During the riots of 2020, plus all of the stuff that happened during COVID with the shutdowns, and we had government leaders stand by as masks were mandated, small businesses were shut down, family incomes were destroyed. And then we were watching our cities being burned down. Then we saw what happened in 2020 with the election. And I personally believe that this is something that God called me to do. And there's more to that story. But, whenever I initially started running for Congress, I wasn't even running in this district. I was running in Congressional District 8 because the part of Conroe that I live in was in 8. Texas added 2 new districts. When you add something, the lines have to shift, the boundaries shifted. So we live in the same house, but we got switched from 8 into 2. And so being a man of principle and spending 6 months running in a district, I decided to go ahead and switch districts, since I now lived in District 2 and Dan Crenshaw became my primary opponent. So I didn't even start off running for Congress specifically to run against Dan Crenshaw. The reason why I started running for office in the first place is because I believe it's something that God called me to do. And so, but here we are, mm-hmm. You want to call it fate. The Bible says the footsteps of a righteous man are order of the Lord. What do you want to say? It was divine appointment. I'll leave that up to the viewers, but here we are. We did really, really well 2 years ago. We only had 3 months to campaign after redistricting. We only raised $45,000, yet we still took almost 20% of the vote. Between me and the other 2 candidates, there were 3 of us that wound up running against Crenshaw at the end of the day. Between the 3 of us, we spent no more than $75,000 against his $8 million, by the way. $8 million is what he spent, not what he made, but what he spent. Between the 3 of us, 26% of the vote. That's half of what's needed to get the job done. So I am convinced, had we had more time, more money, or a combination of the 2, that we could have finished the job once and for all 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we laid a really solid foundation. we got a really good grasp on what the district wants, what the district needs, the kind of representation they're looking for. And I can tell you they're fed up with feeling like the political class is so disconnected from their reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm really excited about the possibility of being elected, and representing this district. So, yeah.
You mentioned God, you mentioned, the, country, Constitution. I feel as if our country has pulled away, from all of it, and we have veteran suicide in this country that's at an all-time high. And what I've said before, and I'll say it again, is like every single time a veteran takes their own life, it reduces the patriotism in this country. And you have all these great, men and women who have sacrificed so much for this great nation. And again, they are patriotic people. They love their country. And then when they remove themselves from this walk in life, our patriotism in this country sinks and it sinks and it sinks while it's being replaced by a lot of people that are coming in with no allegiance to this country. Now, I see that as a major problem, veteran suicide. And I wanted to bring that up because you would be unseating a veteran, a U.S. Navy SEAL. And there's a lot of veterans in this district. How would you help the veteran community of the 2nd Congressional District here in Texas?
Well, so I can tell you this, and it wouldn't just be helping the veteran community in the 2nd Congressional District. This would be helping the veteran community all over Texas and all over the United States of America. So first and foremost, I would not vote to pass the National Defense Authorization Act with red flag laws that were slapped on veterans, which is honestly, it's actually what my opponent did, and he'll deny it. But I can pull up the legislation. I can pull up the yay vote. That honestly kind of threw me for a loop. But let's talk about why there are people who believe that red flag laws need to be slapped on veterans. So we talk about mental health a lot in this country, and there's a saying that it's okay to not be okay. And we do that to try to destigmatize PTSD, to destigmatize trauma, to destigmatize mental health issues. The problem is it's almost like entrapment, because I know right now you go into the VA and you talk with a counselor there and you both start and you buy into the it's okay to not be okay. Your name is going to be flagged, red flag, and is going to go into a federal database. That's not what our veterans need. First and foremost, our veterans are veterans of either Air Force, Marines, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, you name it. They signed on the dotted line and stated, I'm willing, if need be, to give my life to serve this country and to preserve this thing that we call liberty and keep the torch of liberty ablaze.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, they are the first to have their constitutional rights and liberties stripped. That bugs me. Absolutely bugs me. So we need to fix that. But here's the other thing that I want. I also am very well aware that right now in the VA, and I also know that this depends on your classification, right? So if I know from I've talked with veterans, not just all over the district, all over the greater Houston area, all over the state of Texas. There are different classifications of veterans. You have a hero class, and you talk to those hero class, whether they're paratroopers, whether they were special forces or special operations. You talk to that hero class and they're like, man, the VA's great. I never have any issues. But then you talk to those that aren't in that hero class. And I know a lot on both sides. You talk to those that aren't in that hero class. They're struggling to get seen by a doctor. They're having those red flag laws that are slapped on them. When I say red flag laws, I'm not just talking about gun confiscation. They have these red flags. Not only that, but then we talk about the veteran suicide. We need to make available treatments that are not putting drugs in their bodies, where you have to deal with all of these like various side effects, which then require more drugs that have more side effects, that require more drugs that have more side effects. Natural solutions like neurofeedback therapy, which literally rewrites and resets the neural pathways in your brain. And we've seen the studies, and it's a night and day difference whenever you have veterans dealing with trauma, PTSD, so that's the kind of therapy. It's natural. And that's the kind of therapy that I want to see, and the kind of care that I want to see veterans have access to.
Sure. Alternative medicine is a big talking point right now. You've got, DMT, you've got psychedelics, you've got, the use of, CBD and CBD products and all the different cannabinoids that can be found at the plant, if you will. And to touch on a point, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah, I agree with you there, because it's not, unfortunately, with everything I went through in my struggle with the VA, I get a lot of emails and a lot of calls and text messages from veterans from across the country, and I hear all the bad. I know that there is some good going on in the VA, but I don't hear any of the good. I only hear the bad stuff. I get all the negative stuff. This is everything that's wrong with the VA. So I'm a guy that can sit down with a member of the VA committee or the subcommittee on health, or any really congressional member, and tell them everything that's wrong, and how we could perhaps make it a better place, and perhaps a better experience for the veteran community. And a lot of what I hear is veterans are losing their jobs. They're losing their pilot's license. They're being taken off the police force. They're no longer needed at their place of employment where they may have a clearance, because they may be taking an anxiety medicine. It doesn't, because you have post-traumatic stress, doesn't mean that you're not fit to do your job at a very high level. It just means that you've been through some stuff, and you've seen some stuff, and it was a traumatic type event, and you're working through it. And you're a living and walking example of what healing looks like. But because it's in your medical record, people look at that and they say, that's a reason for termination, so we're going to let him or her go. And I tell you what, that's a big problem right there, because you're stripping the livelihoods of folks, a small population of people. And because of the veteran community, it is only 20 million of this country. We have 20 million. At any one time, we have less than 1% of the population is actually serving in the military right now. And these folks have signed that blank check, payable to the United States of America for up to and including their life. For what? To uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And this is a very vulnerable and at-risk community. And it seems as if this community that has done everything for this country is getting the shaft almost at every direction they look at. That's why there's so many 501c3s out there trying to help the veteran community. It's called Veterans Helping Veterans, because a lot of the times they can't rely on the government to do it, because they're going to be put in a line. They can't get the medical attention they need. Their claims are being denied because of, BS reasons. And that leads to a really bad place for a lot of these veterans. And so it is critical that if you are elected as a member of Congress, that you sit down with folks like me and other veteran advocates in this community and in this district, and really find out what the wants and what the needs are, and start to structure this to where, okay, we need to fix this. Maybe we could be a satellite area. Maybe we can do a lot of research here and a lot of development, and really find out what works, and be a leader on a national level. The Houston VA is one of the largest VAs in the country. Plus, right here, we are, Houston is the home of, is the medical hub of the world. So I think that there's a lot of, research and development that can go on here. Plus, there's so many veterans in Texas, let alone right here in Montgomery County and North Harris County. So the VA and veterans would be something that I think that you would have to really take a big stand on.
Oh yeah, and here's something that I actually want to ask you, Brian. So, so we have this invasion going on at our southern border. 8 million illegals since Biden took office and Mayorkas was appointed, and I get word. I think it was the beginning of December. I get word that the VA stops servicing veterans to go and process illegals at the border. What are your thoughts about that?
I'll tell you what happened about that, because I was actually interviewed on a national station with Jeff Katz last year on this. So what happened was this. You have all the VAs from across the country. They didn't just stop servicing veterans. What happened was they had set up some field hospitals down on the border. And I think they still do, because that is the federal government's hospital. That is, if, you were a member of Congress or the president, whatever, you go to Walter Reed. If you're a veteran, you go to your local VAs or the VA hospitals. So first off, definitely completely disagree with sending the VA down to the border to take care of people that have never contributed to this country. So right there, a lot of veterans were taken back. What did happen was when they pull from these hospitals, they're pulling doctors and clinicians from all over the country, which is reducing the staff, which increases wait times. When you have increased wait times, now you're getting delayed and denied care. You're getting pushed away. A lot of medical malpractice can ensue. You never know. Death could happen. You're not getting those tests. There's a lot of equations that can go into this problem that can make it a really bad scenario for a lot of veterans. And plus, a lot of veterans don't have family. A lot of veterans are living on the street. This is vulnerable. The veteran community, people got to understand, it's a vulnerable and at-risk community. Yeah, there's great veterans out there, and there's veterans that are kicking life's butt and all that stuff. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about a large group of veterans, who, have, suicidal ideation, and it's really sad and it's scary, but it's real and it's raw, and it's stuff that we need to make ourselves vulnerable on, and to have a civil discussion on how can we try to help those people out there that don't want the help, and that's the sad thing. You look back on it. I know so many veterans that have been through hell and back, and they're glad now that they got the help that they needed, and they're living a life of success again and fulfillment, and it feels good, but they almost didn't make it. They didn't want to be helped, but somebody took their hand and said, "You're coming with me, and we're gonna help you." And now they thank God every single day for that person, or for that moment, or for that godly calling that woke them up one day, that to where they got up and out of that chair and started to make themselves 1% better every single day, to live the life that they were intended to live.
That's awesome.
And that's what it takes in the veteran community. Again, veterans helping veterans, not going into a counselor and having them sit down and say, okay, well, you've checked all these boxes here, so we're going to give you all these meds. Oh, and we're going to put you on the, you can't buy a gun list and all that other stuff. We're going to take away, your rights that you've upheld and defended for, X, Y, and Z years. And again, the more you contribute, the more you're punished. And that is not fair. That is a bad way to do business. And so that leads me into the next question here. The military. Well, they're having a hard time recruiting right now. And I'll tell you why. Kids aren't dumb. They see their parents and their uncles and their brothers and sisters going through a lot of struggles while they're serving in the military. the military leadership that I've seen displayed on public display from the botched Afghanistan withdrawal to the defense secretary spending time in the ICU and no one knows about it, doesn't call in sick to work, like one of the most powerful men in the world. And there's just a lack of leadership out there. And I hear it from a lot of people. It's not just a few people that tell me. I hear what's going on in and around the military, and it's not, it's not what it used to be. But okay, yeah, you're an old head, it's always better back then, or we're always tougher back then. This is different. There's stuff it just doesn't feel right. It's not fitting right. We have lowered standards, and we're putting ourselves into scenarios that we've never done before. And we're also running. We're cutting and running, and we're paying. It just doesn't make any sense anymore, a lot of the stuff that's going on. And then they get out, and then they go to the VA, and then they have all these problems and all these issues. And the people are like, oh, I don't want that in my life. I don't want to do that. And so they don't join. And so what happens? Again, that patriotism starts to sink lower and lower. They go to college, and we end up forming this like one world type, mentality and government. And before you know it, this Constitution doesn't mean anything, and it's being run amok and drugged through the mud, and it doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah, it does not help that we're teaching our kids that racist is bigoted, homophobic, racist, bigoted, homophobic. Like we're literally raising up our kids to hate America. And I'm
not raising my kids to hate America. I'm raising my kids to love America.
Come on. But that plays a big part. That plays a big part into it, which is why I'm a big supporter of school choice without the strings attached. I want unregulated school choice, but parents need to have the rights and the freedom to be able to choose where to send their kids to school, so that we can start shifting this whole DEI and the CRT and all of that out of our schools, make those schools go bankrupt, so that we can start teaching our kids once again to love and serve God, country, and family. If we start doing that, the patriotism will start to go up with this next generation. We start to remind this up and coming generation of who they are, their identity as Americans, because we have a huge identity problem right now in this country, and people are looking for their identity. They're looking for truth, and the problem is, and there's a story that goes with this if you want me to share it, but the problem is that a lot of this older patriotic generation, they can't figure out how to pass the torch of liberty on to the next generation. And what did Reagan say? That freedom is only ever one generation away from extinction. And that's literally what we're seeing right now, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And that 100%, don't think for a second that doesn't impact the amount of recruiting going on into our military. Just think back to 9/11. Think back to just after 9/11. That inspired so much patriotism. We saw such a surge in recruitment into our armed forces. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. Now, unfortunately, they also used our patriotism against us and passed something called the Patriot Act, which was very unpatriotic and very unconstitutional. But right after 9/11, that surge of patriotism, that's what we need to get back to.
Got a question for you. Congressional question here. And I'm loving this open conversation. I think I look at this as a town hall, really. I mean, because that's what it is. People get to meet and get to know you, and I think that's very important, especially if you're running for Congress, a very, public position and a, very respected position. Once you get in there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And there's always a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And, and I think if you can win over the voters and let them know, hey, look, I'm going to be a good guy in Congress and I'm going to do everything in my power to make this, district and this state and this country a better place for you and me. Well, hear me out. So what I'm seeing a lot from the left is they only like the Constitution if it fits the agenda of the day. Now, we have no slow news days anymore in America. Every day is so much news. People are addicted to it. They get that breaking news. They get that, oh my God, news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. It's like we're living in a movie. And it's been that way for quite some time. And it's like an endorphin rush, man. People are, man, they're looking for the next breaking news thing. Man, they're looking for it. And you see a lot of things that are going on right now that the left is saying, well, that's unconstitutional. This former president shouldn't be on a ballot because of we believe that he did something wrong. So the Constitution says that we can keep him off of the ballot, or the Constitution says that I can protect my body, or whatever it may be, whatever the flavor of the day is, whatever the flavor of the month is. If it fits the left's agenda, they love the Constitution and they will open it up and they will refer to it. There is one section of the Constitution, though, that they do not like, and that is the Second Amendment. And we had talked about red flag laws. You are in Texas. You will be representing one of the reddest districts, in not only in the state of Texas, but in the United States of America. Down goes Texas, down goes the country. So they say, down goes Montgomery County, down goes the country. So how would you go about carrying out a debate, or maybe even just having a conversation with those in Congress? Because it is not their job to cherry pick this. This is something that should never be cherry picked. This is something that should always stand. But it seems as if the more I see these debates and these members of Congress get up and speak, they are working against the very principles and the documents that our founding fathers have put forth for us to run this nation the way we have for generations. What is going on with these members of Congress cherry picking the Constitution and having no ramifications for doing so, and actually even having like Supreme Court people even hold this stuff up? Like, I know it's all unprecedented, and people from that side are always like, well, we need to update it. We need to update the Constitution. It's old. This is from the 1700s. This is old. But it's very well written, and it's not a long read, but it's a very important read, because this is who it is. This is who we are as American people, and this is why we have, the greatest country in the history of mankind. And like you said, President Reagan did say that we are only one generation away from losing that Liberty Bell. How do we keep that Liberty Bell ringing when there's always going to be infighting within the parties, when there are left fighting the right fighting the left, moderates fighting the left, moderates fighting the right, and the Constitution being cherry picked? How do we begin to fix something that's so far gone?
Yeah, that is a very good question, but it's also a very loaded question. So I'll try to keep my answer as succinct as possible. At the end of the day, people always refer to the Constitution, but then they completely ignore the Declaration of Independence. And the bottom line is you can't separate the two. So the Declaration of Independence, if in business terms, right? So let's kind of talk in business terms. The Declaration of Independence is like the Articles of Incorporation, and the Constitution are like the bylaws, right? How the corporation runs, the rules, right? So in the Declaration of Independence, and you mentioned me repeat this earlier, where it says that, actually, let me start over at the beginning of that paragraph where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator by certain unalienable rights, that among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let's just talk about that for a second. We are endowed by our creator. Okay. Our creator. Who is that? That's God. Okay. So there's this big push right now to remove God out of everything, separation of church and state, whenever that's nowhere in the Constitution. People don't even know what it means. It's ignorant as crap. But our Creator, we have been endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life. Life always comes first. Liberty, because you can't have true liberty if you don't first value life, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, happiness isn't a right. The pursuit is. And the pursuit is what people like the World Economic Organization, like the World Economic Forum, right? That's what they're coming. They're trying to take away our identity as a people that likes to work, to pursue, to go after something. But the pursuit of happiness is the right. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. You asked a question in there, basically like, how do we fix it? It's a very, very loaded question, because me by myself, I can't do it. And you by yourself, you can't do it. Right now, you've got people in Congress as well as in the Senate, or in the House and in the Senate, that are trying to rewrite, right? They're trying to redefine the Constitution. When I look at the Constitution and the Declaration and the Federalist Papers, by the way, I want to get into the minds of the Founding Fathers. What did certain terms mean back then? And what was going on in that day? Because that was what was fresh on, like the Revolutionary War, for example. That was fresh on our Founding Fathers' minds. So whenever they Second Amendment was written, which it went through several revisions, by the way, but when the Second Amendment was written, the Revolutionary War and this war that they just fought against the tyrannical government was fresh on their minds. The Second Amendment places a restriction on the government, not the citizen, the government. See, here in America, we have what are referred to as negative rights, right? Negative rights, which means that something has to be limited to kind of leave a void. And in that void, there's liberty, there's freedom. So the Second Amendment limits the government being able to say yes, no, or to be able to regulate in any way, shape, form, or fashion whether we can own a firearm or not, which includes ammunition, because firearms are useless without ammunition. They can't make any additional requirements because it is a right. It's not a privilege. People want to talk about the car, having a driver's license. You got to have a driver's license to drive a car. Driving is a privilege. It is not a right. The Second Amendment, our right to bear arms and our right to self-defense, is just as much a right as our right to life and our right to breathe air. And so here's the problem. The problem is that we don't have enough people that are standing up, and we need more people to stand up. We've got to start building coalitions. We've got to start putting pressure on these legislators. We have to put pressure, make them do the will of the people, right? They're supposed to only be able to govern under our consent. If they refuse to do the will of the majority, then we need to get their butts out of there. Now, the challenge with doing that is that an incumbent has a 98% success reelection rate. And it's because once someone is elected into office, they're pretty much set. Unless that legislator screws up royally and makes the news in a really big way, like just, murdered somebody or something like that, the chances of that incumbent being voted out of office, they only have a 2% chance. We have got to build coalitions that are willing to go out there, to go beyond the walls of the district, beyond the walls of Texas and into other states where these so-called, and the Democrats are going to Democrat. That's what they're going to do. But let's talk about Republicans for a second. 435 voting members of the House, less than 40 have conservative voting records. We need to build coalitions that are willing to look at every single Republican that's not acting and voting like a Republican And we need to expose their voting records to their constituents so that their constituents can vote their butts out of office and replace them with an America First constitutionalist. Now, this is something that's going to take a lot of dang work. It's going to take a lot of time. And here's the last thing that I'll say to this. It's not easy. And to give you an idea, the Marxists have been at it for over 100 years. And what pisses me off is we have a lot of patriots. They see what happened in 2020. They feel disenfranchised. 2 years later, 2022 happens. It's not the red wave. And all of a sudden, they just want to give up. First thing, I'm glad that our founding fathers didn't give up. They fought an actual war for freedom. But then the Marxists, they've literally been at this for decades, over 100 years, exercising patience and exercising the principle of incrementalism. Now it's not incremental anymore because they've already been down that route. But the problem with conservatives is we're looking for results right now. And you know what? I mean, I'm a bigger guy, you know, and I've read a little bit about your story as well. And I know that after you went through what you went through, you kind of hit a bottom point and you were a bigger guy at one point. You look pretty good now, brother. But you know as well as I do, there's no freaking magic pill. It takes freaking work. And so where are the patriots that are willing to work, that are willing to have some resilience, that are willing to freaking go through some persecution, that are willing to keep the torch of liberty, that are willing to give of themselves their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for the cause of liberty, like our founding fathers? Where's that? That's what we need. But we have too many, and I'm going to keep it clean. We've got too many freaking people that call themselves patriots, but they're sunshine patriots and summer soldiers. But I think about Thomas Paine, that these are the times that try men's souls. These are the times that try men's souls. We have got to show up. We've got to show out. We have got to do whatever we can legally and ethically. The problem is we're not letting ourselves be heard. You know, Reagan talked about the silent majority. That's the problem. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. If the majority is silent, then the minority will tyrant. And that's what we're seeing right now. If the majority is silent, the minority will tyrant. And that's what we're seeing. And do you really think the norm are for all of these little kids in these schools to go through all of this trans surgery? Do you really think that all of these kids, that they're confused about their sexual orientation, about what gender they are? No, they're not confused. But why is all this stuff going on? The tyranny of the minority. Now, we got to step up, man. And sorry, man, I'm getting fired up. But this is, you know, I've always said that if we lose our country, it will not be because of corruption in the government. It will be because of complacency in the electorate. Where are the patriots that are willing to stop passing the buck, that are willing to look in the freaking mirror and say, if it's to be, it's up to me, and accept some gosh dang responsibility? This is our country. It's time for us to reclaim what rightfully belongs to us. Sorry, I'm not trying to hijack the show, man. Just we're getting on to some topics here that's firing me up.
No, that's perfect. You know, I was just wanting to ask your opinion on that whole cherry picking of the Constitution, because I see a lot of it, and they can't have it both ways. They can't use it on a Monday and abuse it on a Tuesday. The Constitution is in stone, and it should always be.
Well, it's rules for thee, but not for me. I'm okay. Think about this, right? So this is actually one of the things I want to tackle. Okay. The owning and trading of stocks while serving in Congress. Now, I'm not going to make any accusations here, but if you look at unusual whales and you look at how many of our elected officials are beating the market, I mean, it kind of looks like insider trading. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'll let everybody make up their own minds for that. But if it is, again, it's that rules for thee, but not for me. And that's the problem, is that the political class isn't subject to the same rules and the same laws. I mean, they have these protections. Mm-hmm. It's not right. They are so disconnected.
Yeah, it seems as if there's so much nefarious actions out there that, again, that we're so left in the dark with, and it's hard when you're left in the dark. Again, people start making assumptions, and you don't want a population making assumptions. And then, that's how, conspiracy theories start. That's how rumors start. That's how, a nation starts to really fall apart.
We need some transparency.
Divided, and that's where we're at right now, because we are not being told anything. And people go on to TikTok, and, all it takes is a man of influence to say something that could not be even near the truth. And you could have a very large, vast majority of a population thinking it's true, thinking it's real. Doom and gloom. What's real? What's not? What's up? What's down? What's left? What's right? Nobody knows anymore, because, again, they're lying. That's a sham. Oh, no, that's a sham. No, that's not the truth. It's like everywhere. It's coming in everywhere. So unless you are up and awake and seeing everything that's going on, you need to be smart enough to come to the realization that maybe I need to spend 5 or 10 minutes researching something before I spat my mouth off about something, or a subject that I may not know. That's what you're talking about earlier, being ignorant to something. That's what I see out there. I see a lot of guys getting up, going to work, living in their bubble, going to 24-hour fitness, going out for a beer after work, then, coming home and Netflixing and chill and, wash, rinse, repeat. And they don't get out of the bubble of what's going on until one day there's a major problem escalating, and they're like, oh, damn, I never even, wow, like, where have I been? Well, you're hiding under a rock.
How'd we get here? Right. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. And, and people are like, whoa, what's going on? Is this the United States of America? Or, well, there's only, it seems like every, election, people get fired up, and, and then the more one party gets beat down, the more they're not going to want to participate, or the more the infighting is, the more the name calling comes. He's not a real Republican. Oh, they're not. He's not black enough to be, what they say. Biden said something about, if you vote for Trump, you're not black enough. Right. What is going on with, like, the division of this country? It's coming in from the highest levels.
Yeah.
And, and when you see a country like the United States of America putting leadership out there on display in uttering such false, just incredible accusations about things, and summarizing a group of people or a populace to be something that they aren't because they vote a certain way, that is horrible. That is not the United States of America that I know. And it should always be up to the voters. But are we ever going to have another election where people are going to say, yeah, that was a fair election? I don't think so, because I think we've come so far down this rabbit hole now of all this truth and transparency starting to come out, because people are digging. And they have so many journalists and this and that, and that are digging through stuff, and they're finding information. And they're like, was this election real? Was it true? Did it really happen this way? Were there votes not counted? Were there votes that, were dead people voting? This is stuff that a lot of people are always going to say, hey, look, this wasn't a fair election. And in the United States of America, we shouldn't be having a election that is rigged or that is not fair. So anytime now from here on out, because it was such a big deal in 2020, whoever wins or loses, it's always going to be rigged from here on out. So how do we break that cycle? But that's a different story there. But we only have about 8 minutes left here, and I wanted to get into a few more topics here. Now, you are a strong believer in term limits. You say 4 terms, no longer than 8 years. That's 4 2-year terms. Elaborate on that for a moment.
Yeah. So I like to always try to have some sort of data to back things up and to have some reasoning behind things. So typically, whenever you look at a conservative congressman's voting record, it's going to be conservative about 8 years. And then after 8 years, it starts to take a nosedive. And so that's why I believe that, 8 years is enough. Now, sometimes people aren't even going to make it that far. My opponent didn't even make it past the first year. A lot of people don't know his first term. Past his first term. I should rephrase that. A lot of people don't know that his first term was actually his worst voting record ever. And it's been better, and it's gotten a little bit worse than that better mark. And it's kind of gone back and forth like a rubber band. But all in all, we need to make sure that we are getting new people with new ideas, fresh perspectives. We need, if they're in DC longer than 8 years, what we see is they get like corrupted. They get swept up and they join the club, right? That establishment club. And then, before you know it, they'll be 10 years older than God before they actually retire. That they've been in there for so long. So we need to keep those fresh perspectives, those fresh legs constantly coming into Congress. And it is going to take a constitutional amendment to make that happen. And I believe that we can get it done. But the problem, though, and another reason why we need term limits is, you think about during the campaigning is a job interview. And they make all of these outrageous promises during the job interview. We get excited. We hire them. We send them to DC to represent us. But then they get corrupted. They're given a company credit card instead of being fiscally conservative with it. They just kind of go on a spending spree. And then they tell us that I didn't vote to send $40 billion over to Ukraine. But then they fail to show us the receipts. Now, here's on our part. Here's where a lot of us are stupid, is that we don't ask to see the receipt. Why aren't we asking to see the dadgum receipt? Actually, it's worse than that. It's not just that we're not asking to see the receipt. The receipt is online. It's public.
Nobody's engaging, though. But nobody cares about this stuff until they are somehow affected by what's going on by bad policy.
Yep.
Again, how can we wake a populace up and say, hey, look, this is in your backyard. This is what's going on. We have all this stuff that's going on, and it's just craziness.
Well, I can touch on that if you want me to.
Sure.
How do we do it?
We got 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So let me touch on this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So the left is very strategic. Again, they're very patient. They've been at this for over 100 years. They know how to market. They know how to sell. They know how to communicate, and they know how to make people feel like they're part of something bigger than them. The right, you know what we do? Facts don't care about your feelings, or don't question my faith. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. That's what the right does. And then we wonder why. So here's what we have to do. We have to accept the fact that where people are right now, where we are as a society, most people are overworked, underpaid. They're stressed the heck out, going home to a spouse who's also overworked, underpaid, stressed the heck out, dealing with kids, many of them. When they get free time, do you really think that they want to look at politics? Do you really think they want to go to their local Tea Party or local Pachyderm or whatever women's Republican club meet? No, they're looking for an escape. Especially since this whole idea that you don't talk about politics and religion because it's so divisive, right? So we can either complain about people or we can accept the fact that that's where they're at, and we can figure out how to meet people there.
Mm-hmm.
And they want an escape. Let's give them an escape. And this is the whole purpose behind Project Defiant, which is one of my companies, where we are putting on events that are inspiring patriotism, supporting veterans and advocating for local Texas businesses. So we have an event that's patriotic, because everybody loves to be patriotic. They just don't want to be political, but they'll be patriotic. And then while people are there, we have organizations like CVA, Concerned Veterans for America, other partners like the Patriot Academy, right? What we have Battle to Be, right? We have these organizations that we're getting people connected and plugged into, where we can start to incrementally take them from being apathetic and complacent to actually caring about something, where then we can take them deeper. So that's the first step, is we got to learn to engage people properly. Then we can get them connected, and which means we can get them educated. So it's engage, educate. The third step in that process is we have to get them activated. And we cannot be the dictators of what activation looks like, because activation could be as simple as serving in your church. It could be as simple as, I'm going to start a small group and take people through biblical citizenship in modern America. That activation could be running for office or running for school board, or even just choosing to start going to a local school board meeting. So that's how we do it, but it takes commitment, and it takes intentionality, and it takes thinking strategically, which the conservatives have been extremely, extremely bad about. But that's, in my opinion, that's my plan, and that's how I believe that we can fix it.
And, I know that you also support the Fair Tax Act and single subject bills. And, I'll have you back on and we can go much more in depth. Like, I know that this is our first go around here, and I wanted to basically introduce myself to you and invite you on, one, as a citizen of this county and as a constituent of the 2nd Texas Congressional District. So I wish you well in the election on March 5th, and we shall see how this will all shake out. But folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen to the podcast. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TikTok, and Twitter. Simply search Today with Tally. Also learn more about me and my personal story, and even get my new book at briantally.com. That's briantally.com. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for the Today with Tally podcast, this is